People above 30, what is something you regret doing or not doing when you were younger? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. Take care of your health before it is too late. If you are young and having back issues or any other chronic or not problem, you have to take care of this before it spirals out of control. You may think you're tough and push through it now, or that they will go away, but these types of problems can slowly get worse and creep up on you. I am currently living with the consequences of this. I feel like I am 90 and I have at least 4 major health issues at the moment, and I don't even know where to start. If I had tackled my neck issues when I was younger, my life would be a lot better right now. Edit all these stories, I feel them. I remember coming to the realization that no, it is not in fact normal to have back pain when you're young. I remember having to stop and sit down when I was like 14 whenever I walked any distances. It was like having someone stick a broomstick in your back super hard. I just lived through the pain thinking that it would eventually go away like a moron. I am 30 now, and doing the dishes aggravates my neck so badly that I nearly have to lay down after doing them. I am lucky that my situation allows me to be flexible and lay down when I need to. Story 2. I did my thesis on regret as a function of age, using a survey with 1,400 participants. The overwhelming finding was that regret for things that you failed to do, omission regrets, stick with you much more than regrets for things you did, commission regrets. Furthermore, when we are young, omission regrets are less salient and meaningful. As we age, regret for things we failed to do bother us more, while we tend to get over our commission regrets. This is not surprising. What was surprising was that people with a sense of spirituality find that having regret, regardless of the type, is a useful experience. And they benefit from revisiting or thinking about these things in several domains, making sense of life, fostering social connections, and guiding future decisions. Story 3. I had as much fun as I could when I was in my teens and 20s. Do I regret spending money I didn't have doing things I shouldn't have because it set me back financially 10 years? No, yes, not really. Would I rather do those things in my 60s to 70s when I could afford it? No. So no, I don't regret it. Do the things if you can while you can, because tomorrow may not come for you. That doesn't mean break the law. It means if you want to take a trip to see what the hell ever happened, just do. Because once you start adulting, you may have the money to do, but you sure as shit won't have the time. Do I regret breaking my body playing sports and other activities that I am now suffering through? Because I push my body to an extreme level. When I am hurting a lot, yeah. When I am reminiscing about it, no, it was fun as hell. So while you are young, you do you. Go have fun. As long as the only person you are hurting is you. Now, when you get older and look back and think, maybe I shouldn't have done that or said that, all that means you are growing as a person. I hope you have those moments before you are 30, but it's never too late to stop being a dick. Story 4. When I was 30, I was married. We were in the process of moving. The wife had gone on ahead and I would be following in a month after finishing up my job. Everything was packed up and sent ahead. I was sleeping on an air mattress and had a lawn chair in the living room. No TV, no computer. My only entertainment was library books. So a few days before I was scheduled to leave, I just got so bored of reading library books that I decided to go out. I hit up a local bar, had a good time. I'd been talking to a couple of college girls, and one thing led to another, and they invited me back to their place for a threesome. And I thought to myself, there's no way the wife could ever find out. I'll be gone in 2 days, so there's no way that these girls would ever be able to track me down again. It's perfect. And then I turned them down, because I'm married, and that means something to me. My marriage was worth more than a one-time fling. Anyway, long story short, 3 years later I was divorced after finding out that my wife slept with 5 other men. I kind of regret my choice now. Story 5. This should be higher. Seriously, save 10-15% of your income. Even, especially if it seems like you can't afford to, save and invest all you can. I've never regretted having a few grand on hand to pay a tax bill. Buy a new appliance. Note that if you own your house, all of your appliances will likely break within the course of a year or two. Or put a down payment on a car when the old one broke. Set it up automatically to transfer to an emergency fund and to long-term investments after each paycheck. If you freelance or have variable income, transfer a percentage each time. Story 6. Did you do something silly and far-fetched, like try to be a doctor or lawyer? My buddy moved to Seattle after high school to chase music, and I played it safe and stayed in Kansas. He moved back before COVID after a decade in the Seattle scene to settle down with a family. Bought a house early on and made $300K profit on the sale. That's about as much as my retirement equity. And now I'm chasing the music dream again as a hobby in my 30s, with dreams of leaving my 9 to 5. Moral of the story for me was to do what you're passionate about, but with a healthy degree of introspection about yourself, your ethics, skills, and greater life circumstances. I'd say for the average person, life will work itself out. You'll take your lumps through life, but you'll also have a bunch of wins too. I don't know how old you are or your situation, but I hope you're in a good place now. And I'd like to reaffirm that your dreams aren't necessarily idiotic, even if they didn't go to plan. Story 7. My grandmother died and left me, and only me, a sizable inheritance. The same year I had just finished chemo and thought perhaps a windfall was an upswing. I knew my grandmother a little, but I left home pretty early and enlisted after that, so we never had a relationship really. But I got out and away, and the rest of our family were vipers, which was enough to put me at the top. My brother, feeling left out, challenged the will and emptied his savings doing so. I offered him half, but he felt entitled to all of it. At the end of it, penniless and desperate, my brother ended his own life. Most of the money was eaten up in court, and what was left wasn't much. If you ever receive news of an inheritance or windfall, please consider that your family may destroy itself in pursuit of the money. Even if they're going to act that way anyway, you will at least be able to sleep at night. Story 8. I'm currently estranged from my parents. They have the ability to end this at any time, they just won't. They controlled me all through my childhood, and I kept chasing approval from them. I missed out on so many experiences because I wanted to be an obedient good kid. I wish I had done more stupid shit when I was younger. Drugs, sex, rock and roll. Instead, I was consumed with panic attacks over losing my 4, and now that I'm a burnt-out gifted kid in my 30s, I really struggle to relate to people my own age. Story 9. Think about what the true impact of having kids is. Not for the coming 5 years, but for the coming 20 to 30 years when having multiple kids. It's great. You'll love them. They will love you, and you will get a lot in return. But the impact on your personal freedom and plans is huge and should not be underestimated. I've talked to a few friends that have children, still very young, and they all mentioned one thing you give up is self-actualizing. Some people get into sports. Maybe they pursue a lot of hiking and backpacking. Maybe it's aggressively pursuing a career. Maybe it's just living a leisurely life floating around wherever the wind blows. Maybe it's a combination of things. But when you have a kid, that becomes your priority. You self-actualize as a parent, which comes with incredible love and blessings, and is something that I, as someone child-free, will never experience. But it does come with significant sacrifice. Story 10. I went on a medication that made me gain a lot of weight, to the point that I didn't even recognize myself. I started to gain weight, told my doctor, who said weight gain on this medication was very rare and to keep taking it. After several months, I told her I had to stop taking it because the weight gain was like a runaway train. I stopped taking the meds, my weight stabilized. She finally admitted it was the medication. The damage was done, and my body will never be the same. I regret not listening to myself when I knew I was right, and she was wrong. My body was suddenly doing something drastic and completely different than it had ever done, and the only thing that changed in my routine was this medication. She's probably forgotten I even exist at this point. And now, 10 years later, I am still suffering from the consequences of trusting her over trusting myself. Story 11. Finding love looks different as you get older. As a teenager, young adult, you and the people you date can have lots of passion, vitality, excitement, etc. You can lose yourself in the joy of the moment and have lots of fun. Then you get a bit older and you have to worry about drinking too much because you can't bounce back like you used to. You are still trying to get your life off the ground, so things like finances, health, and social obligations are always factors when making decisions. Then once you're firmly in adulthood, the people you date have had some bad experiences, so they may have a chip on their shoulder, be a bit cynical, or have a kid that is a whole can of worms. First dates are more than ever going to feel like interviews, and their lack of passion, lust for life makes date ideas very limited, and fewer things will let you see them giddy. Young love, old friends, these are things that simply become pipe dreams once you get old enough. Wish I had more. Story 12. Quit cigarettes. I smoked when I was in college socially, but that creeps up on you, and now I'm a daily smoker with so much time behind me smoking cigarettes that I barely remember a time when I didn't. It sucks. They're horrible. They're not worth the 10 minutes of feeling good. Quit now. Don't wait until you're out of college or your 20s. Habits form so easily. Story 13. I wish I'd gone out more. I spent most of my 20s at home watching TV with my parents or then boyfriend. I never had camping trips, or went to gigs, or out clubbing, or dinners at other people's houses. I just didn't. And now I regret that. I didn't have friends to go out with, I didn't know where to meet people or how to solidify friendships. I was very socially awkward, and I'm only now remedying that in my mid-30s. I could have made some fantastic memories and forged wonderful connections, but I let others hold me back. Go to that concert on your own. Join that D&D group. Talk to random people in line. Have fun. Story 14. I regret not partying. I've never actually been to a real party before with drinking and loud music, and I feel like I missed out on the phase because I wanted to feel morally superior to everyone else my age. I also deeply regret turning down a guy I had a major crush on in college. I didn't realize he was asking me out until a solid 3 years later, and I remember feeling sad and confused when he started avoiding me after that. And there was another guy I also was crushing on, and in retrospect, he was also into me, and I really wish I had picked up on it. Story 15. So there was this one time I wish I had called out from work when I didn't. I lived in a large house at the time with a lot of roommates. There were a total of 6 of us living in the house at the time, and we'd all been friends for a long time previous to moving in. I'd been in a bit of thin ice at work at the time due to calling out a bit too often. We had a friend from out of state, H, visiting, and one of her close friends, C, came over the previous night. I'd known CC since high school, and we'd hooked up once before. I'd also hooked up with H on a couple of occasions, but not with either recently. We'd all partied a bit the night before, but I went to bed early to wake up for work. I worked construction, so I had to wake up super early, like 4:00 a.m. Everyone was asleep when I woke up, and H and C were sleeping on couches in the living room. I went down to make coffee, then got in the shower. I guess making coffee woke up H and C because they were both awake and packing a bong when I came down from my shower. They asked me if I wanted to join them and suggested we could take the bong up to my bedroom. The way they were asking made it incredibly clear that if I had accepted, we'd be having a threesome that morning. Well, like I said, I had been on very thin ice at work from calling out too much. I was afraid I'd get fired if I called out again, so I declined and went to work. In retrospect, I don't think I'd have been fired. I should have called out and gotten my wet. What is the one mistake that can ruin your whole life? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. My dad worked for a town government. Though he wasn't a firefighter, his office was housed in the main fire station for the town. In the entry foyer of the station, there was a shelf of banged, bent, punctured, scratched, scraped, etc. helmets. They were all taken from crash victims in the town helped by the firefighters and EMTs who lived. They all looked pretty gnarly, but saved a life like they were supposed to. It made quite an impression on teenage me, which obviously was the intent, and to this day, I never ever ride without a helmet. Story 2. Credit cards are not free money. Have some impulse control. You will end up paying for that stupid thing you didn't need 2 and 3 times over. Your money will go much further when you aren't paying 25% interest on the balance you're carrying month to month. Credit can be really useful and can help you get out of a tight spot. But if you don't pay that balance down quickly, you're going to end up throwing a lot of your money in the trash. Don't let the balance pile up. Yes, you. I'm talking to you. Don't let that balance pile up. Falling down the debt rabbit hole is far easier than you think. This is the predicament I'm in now, lol. I've barely used my card over the years, but the interest is so high that my balance actually went up instead of down, despite all the money I've put into it. But I don't exactly have enough money on hand right now to just put a fat wad of cash on it and bring the balance down to a point where I feel comfortable, not even just completely paid off. Don't get a student credit card, y'all, lol. Story 3. Listening to loud music. If you are doing it, stop. It can ruin you in ways you can't even imagine. Protect your ears. Wear earplugs on concerts and parties. Never wear earbuds again or on the lowest volume. Edit. I'm not talking about hearing loss. Not even tinnitus, which can be quite scary. I'm talking about pain hyperacusis, which makes every sound physically hurt your ears. And it's not just some mild pain, it can be debilitating. It leaves you homebound. And the worst thing is, doctors have no idea about it, neither are they interested in it. So please, protect your ears. It's not a joke. Wish someone would tell me that on time. Story 4. There's a guy who lives in my mom's neighborhood who is essentially a zombie after doing some kind of drug at a party like 10 years ago. Don't know what kind or what exactly happened. All I know is he took something and went from a football prodigy with a scholarship to someone who needs in-home care. He just stands across from the corner store at the entrance of the neighborhood all day. I wave to him whenever I pass by, but he doesn't acknowledge me. He just stands there in his own world. People often mistake him as a homeless guy and leave food clothes for him since he's always barefoot, in torn-up clothes and lacking a jacket. Apparently, he lives with his mom, who was supposed to be his caregiver, but I get the feeling she doesn't do much caring for him. Story 5. It's a different kind of hell, man. I have ADHD and a decade-long depression family history of substance abuse. Also a very bad chronic pain. I wasn't ever going to use drugs, but I was prescribed opioids for pain because nothing else worked and the pain was so bad I couldn't finish high school. When I was taking a normal 15 milligrams a day dosage of oxycodone, I started sertraline, an antidepressant which made me incredibly depressed. A weird side effect. I felt emotional pain like never before, from a medication that was supposed to help. Well, turns out Oxy is pretty good at numbing you up. I went from 15 milligrams a day to 100 milligrams a day, a lot with no tolerance, in 2 to 3 weeks. I quit, well, ran out, stayed off it for a year or so. Then I tried some again, and oh boy. First you convince yourself to take it once a week, then 5 days on, 10 days off, then it becomes 7 on 7 off, then something happens in life and it's every day. I've been on 30-40 mg a day for the past 3 years and quit several times. But as if the addiction weren't enough, I actually still do need this garbage for my pain, which is worse than ever. Oh, and fun fact, lots of side effects. Fatigue, stomach issues, emotional numbness, anxiety, and withdrawals are worse than a kidney stone, flu, and emotional breakdown all at once. And of course, my withdrawals are 10 times worse than most people, since my brain is used to feeling pain, uses these pathways all the time. I get the pain aspect of withdrawals 90% worse than other. But healthy people at the same dosage. Don't do drugs. Story 6. Doing a massive dose of THC in edible form if you're not seasoned and experienced with THC. Studies are showing that psychosis issues are being unlocked from these borderline traumatic experiences on massive doses of THC. For example, somebody who has potential for psychosis in their genetics and never smokes weed could very well permanently fuck up their life by ingesting THC one time. If they don't control the amount and go overboard the first or within the first few times of ingesting it. Emergency room visits have been going up and up for THC-related experiences, but mostly due to the fact these people who rarely or never smoke weed decide to eat a 100-200 milli candy bar, when in reality, they should be starting with 2-5 milligrams of THC and working their way up slowly. Concentrates. Dabs are a huge problem as well, as doing a few dabs within an hour period far exceeds the amount of THC anybody was ingesting much before 15 to 20 years ago. The crazy levels of THC available to us now is just ridiculous, and we won't understand the true extent of the damage being done for a while. So be careful. Story 7. Starting to count calories and see food as a number led me to first stop eating the food my parents served. Because of my sister's eating disorder, they had a very sharp eye on everything I put in my mouth to make sure I wouldn't follow her down that path. That led me to eat and then throw it all up. I measured my weight every day and was manic as hell. It has taken me years, and I don't think I will ever have a healthy relationship with food again. I used to love eating crisps, but now I just wonder how much I have to run or how long it will take me in the bathroom to get it out of my system. It might look like a good way to lose weight, but please don't do it the way I did. Food is not your enemy, so don't make it one story 8. Anything that can get you sent to prison. Employment opportunities can be very limited after that. I admit I'm more career-focused than average, but bad employment opportunities can mean a lifetime of poverty and struggling. Add to that, some places won't even rent to you if you have certain felonies, so you're stuck living in the only low-income area that will rent to you, often unsafe, working the only shitty job that will hire you. It can really be a horrible spiral that is difficult to get out of. Having children with the wrong person. It will ruin your life in all of the small ways that seep into your life quality that you can't even imagine. Having children too young, before you have at least some degree of stability in life. You don't have to be a millionaire. But having children when you're $10 away from not being able to make rent is a terrible decision and rarely has good outcomes. Story 9. My cat puked, and the owner of the Airbnb gave me a day to leave during the eclipse weekend, so the hotel I could find that was cheapest will most likely be so much that I cannot afford the deposit and move-in fees for permanent housing. I was just about to find out next week if I got approved for. Now, all of that is ruined, and I am just in this hotel for a week. I rent a car from Hertz to do deliveries for Uber Eats. The app is glitching for me right now and I can't work. I am waiting for the refund from Airbnb for the large amount they charged me on the 5th that made finding a monthly rate impossible, forcing me into a hotel spending all this money. All because I will not leave my cat. The owner of the Airbnb told me I could stay if I got rid of my cat. I would never do that. He is my best friend. Now, I have this last week in this hotel with him until we are completely homeless, so I am trying to find a home for him, but he is a tough cat to find a place for, and I am afraid for him. Story 10. I don't have kids, but when I was on Old, I went out with a guy over a fairly brief period, and it seemed to me that he had PTSD because of what the mother of his child, they had never been a couple, was doing to him and his child. It was pretty sick stuff. It's very difficult to get full custody of a very young child if the mother, as unfit as you like, is clever, evil, absolutely determined, very plausible and relentless. He hadn't actually tried because he knew that the moment he went down that road, it would be all-out war. He had moved heaven and earth to damp down the hostilities at every turn. But she was an extremely hostile person who was basically at war with the world. He was a lovely, patient man who adored his daughter and wanted to rescue her. He just didn't know what to do, and I believed rightly, he was totally outgunned by the woman. He was a wreck of a man. It was very sad to see. In my opinion, there was zero chance of his having a relationship with a woman with all this trauma going on in his life. Story 11. Smoking, okay, may sound lame, but hear me out. I started when I was 16. It weakened my interstitial membranes, causing umbilical hernias. Hardened arteries causing heart failure caused lung damage, asthma, and COPD. It's got to the stage now that with some older smokers, GPs are literally triaging your death. It's quite sad. I gave up 14 years ago. The lung specialist says that I am unlikely to experience any more damage, and my lungs will age normally as they should from now on. But just bending over leaves me struggling to breathe. Statistically, reaching the retirement age of 68 for me, in this country in good health, is highly unlikely. The other bit, investing in a pension properly from a young age. Story 12. Recently, I told my 18-year-old college freshman baby brother, one of the worst things he could do right now is get a DUI. That'll stop him from driving, getting a job, and if he's not getting kicked out of school, he's on financial aid, make it very difficult to get back and forth. I've also talked to him about how dangerous drunk driving is, and they taught him about it in school. But he never realized how severe the consequences are, even if he doesn't hurt anyone or get in an accident. My little brother is admittedly kind of an airhead and thinks if nothing happened, he should just get a slap on the wrist. But I think that actually scared him straight, and he does call if he needs to be picked up. Story 13. Having kids. I have 4, and I love them to death. Love them enough to not want an abortion anyways. If I didn't have kids, I'd either be super strung out with nothing but addiction keeping me afloat, or 100% career-focused a real job and a home by car things to my name. Either way, it would be easier than what I have now. I'll never tell my kids they were mistakes. They're not. Plus, my mom did that. It feels pretty crappy as a kid. Realistically, the kids aren't. The pregnancies were, sure. But there are kids. That shouldn't happen. An unwanted pregnancy. Make sense? But the guilt that I'm not taking care of them right, because my money, time, and health aren't right, is so rough. Knowing they should have better, and watching them cry as they realize some people do have better. That I was not prepared for. Plus the inability to do literally anything for myself. Dentist, gym, working where when I want to, is pretty fed. The constant bickering with the bad choices of my past, kids' fathers, there's 2 of those to deal is no fun, and again puts the kids in a bad spot. I'm a firm believer in there's no right time. But I've also learned you should have some serious and in-depth conversations before having a kid with someone. Things like, if we split, what are your views on dating with children? And if we fall on hard times, are you going to blame the child me? And if we both work 40-hour weeks, What do you expect to do in the house and with the child? That last one sounds stupid, but it's important. I thought I was with the right guy both times I was wrong. Story 14. Getting bitten by a wild animal and not going to the ER. This just happened to a family member of mine yesterday, except I eventually talked them into going to the hospital. They got rabies prophylaxis, tetanus shot, and antibiotics. Rabies is obviously the scary 100% fatal one if not treated. Today we found out that the animal has canine distemper, so it would have died a horrible death in the wild. Animal control euthanized it, which is mercy compared to how it would have died. Plus there's a lot of really bad life-altering diseases humans can catch besides rabies. Story 15. Refusing a job offer because you think you are in your comfort zone, place of work, and end up getting fired out of the blue. Biking while busy with the phone is one of the most stupid things I have seen people doing. Drag racing in the street like Cameron Heron can put you in jail for your whole life just because you wanted to have fun, which is very, very stupid. Going to school and college. Spending your time in schools is a waste of your youth. Why not be homeschooled and then gain skills instead?
What's the best example you have witnessed of someone destroying their own happiness life? Before we start with the first story, please hit a subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. My friend of friend had a wife, a kid on the way, a good job. I was in the same grade as his little sister. He was 2 years older. And we went to the same school from kindergarten through high school. Last year, he was sentenced to almost 40 years in a federal prison for conspiracy to solicit a 14-year-old who was actually an undercover agent, and a slew of CP charges. Now the wife has divorced him. He will never see his kid, and will be an old man if he gets out. There were a lot of things he said in online chat forums that are so horrible I couldn't even putting that thing out there. Story 2. Some guy at work was caught red-handed stealing AirPods from the locker room. When he was sent to pick up his own kit before being sent home, he excused himself to go to the toilet and took a shit on the floor. The kicker is that we work on an oil rig. It's impossible to get away with theft, and he was a senior technician making really good money. He didn't need the AirPods, he was just stealing for the fun of it. He's now not required back, and all the companies talk to each other. He shat away his career over a pair of AirPods. Story 3. A nurse I work with recently got fired. One of our residents' nursing home was in the hospital. He had a debit card, but statements went to our business manager. She noticed a charge for a takeout lunch on his card. Generally, we take resident wallets and put them in the nursing manager's office, but this one was in the narcotics box, meaning only nurses for that unit had access to it. When the business manager, nursing manager, and executive director called in this nurse to discuss it, he lunged at the business manager and put her in a chokehold. He is in his late 50s, early 60s. Had a full career with pension from the army before nursing. Made reasonable money as a nurse, and now has an assault charge, a financial abuse of a vulnerable adult charge, and I'm sure is losing his nursing license over stealing money for a takeout lunch. Story 4. Someone left $10K cash in a sealed envelope on the counter at a retail job I had. I gave it immediately to the owner of the store, who put it in the safe. I knew the customer as they were a regular. He came back in a panic about 30 minutes later. I didn't get a thank you, f*** off, nothing. Haha. The store owner ended up giving me a $100 bill after nicely telling the customer he was a d*** for not saying thank you. Man, that guy and his wife were great to work for. Story 5. My husband's friend had a beautiful wife, gorgeous house, 2 lovely boys, a job he loved, and lots of great friends who loved him. Then he decided at the age of 35 to get into hard drugs. He has been in and out of prison for violent crimes, transportation of large volumes of heroin, attempted murder, burglary, and stalking. He is homeless again as he burned down his flat on purpose to get a move. No one will ever talk to him again. He's now 55 and has nothing. His wife divorced him after giving him far too many chances. His sons hate him, his real friends gone forever. All for nothing. Story 6. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist. The first patient I ever lost was a 2-year-old girl who we knew would eventually leave us due to multiple medical problems. She passed peacefully at home, where we did all our therapy sessions. She was never not attached to multiple machines that kept her alive. A track, vent, CO2 monitors, so many wires and alarms. A week to the day after her passing, I woke from a dream where I was holding her on my lap. Her mother was next to me, and we were playing. She was completely healed, not a wire in sight. Smiling, talking, she was not able to speak in life, and being a normal 2-year-old. I knew she was okay. I already believed in heaven, but this made me believe I saw her there. Story 7. My daughter and I were standing outside of a shop in a strip mall in a very suburban area. A smartly dressed man in a nice suit was approaching us, and as he did, a squirrel approached as well. Strange place for a squirrel to be. The man smiled at us, we smiled back. The squirrel scurried closer to the man. The man fixed his gaze on the squirrel, and the squirrel scurried faster toward him as he started to panic. And that damn squirrel ran up the man's leg and around his body, and that grown man let out a shriek I'll never forget. My daughter and I just watched in horror as this poor man got assaulted by a crazy-ass squirrel. The squirrel finally took off, and all three of us just stared at each other like, what the f just happened here? It was wild. Story 8 was in a car accident where the vehicle rolled twice over a median into oncoming traffic lanes. Ejected from the car and walked away with a scratch on my forearm. I'm pretty strict about wearing my seatbelt, and for some reason I didn't have it on this particular day. I was told if I had it on, I more than likely would have broken my neck in the crash and would be dead. Felt very out of body for the rest of the day. I am still strict about my seatbelt, and always wear it now, despite the bizarre occurrence from the crash. Crazy part was there was 5 others in the car with the same circumstances as me. We all had minor to zero injuries. It felt weird and unexplainable to walk away from that situation. Story 9. My best friend's ex-wife. He was the most loving husband who doted on her and gave her everything. They wanted to start a family. His family was also very accepting of her. She was a counselor who decided to cheat on him with one of her patients. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. My friend finally saw the light and divorced her. He's now remarried to a fantastic woman who appreciates him as much as he does her, and they just had their first child. I don't know what the ex-wife is doing now, but I hope she knows what she threw away one day. Story 10. A former classmate of mine pursued medicine even though she didn't want it. Her parents was a big factor of this decision. She was into music, and I'd have to say she was great and damp. Really passionate doing it. Her parents wasn't just supportive. During college, she failed almost every subject and then eventually dropped out. The last time I heard, she left home and is living with her BF now. It's just unfortunate she wasn't able to take the path that she loves. F the parents, honestly, for pressuring her. I think she would have been happier if she pushed through music. I don't blame her though, maybe she didn't have a choice. Sometimes we have to disappoint our parents a little bit to be happy. Story 11. I was a child protection specialist for years. I was assigned to work with a certain mom. It was the 3rd time the courts had been involved with her due to drug abuse. But her drug of choice was huffing. The only huffing case I ever had. She was absolutely a lovely person. She had worked hard to earn a degree and enter into a career field. She was kind and beautiful. She was cooperative and she was determined. But despite how hard she was trying, she would relapse, and this was to be the last chance she got with the courts, so the stakes were high. We worked so well together. She spent 18 months going to treatment, getting re-employed, getting her own place, and having increased visits with her kids, who were also wonderful. The kids had been staying at her parents' place while we were working towards progress. We went to court and requested reunification, and the judge granted it. We were all so proud of her and happy for them as a family. We planned to fully move her kids home with her a week from that very court date. 2 days before we planned to return her kids to her, she drove her car through the front of a Walmart because she had been huffing and was high. She called the Walmart employee and proceeded to huff herself to death in the electronics aisle, where there was keyboard duster spray, while law enforcement was on its way. I got the news at 5 a.m. that she was dead and had to go tell her children they wouldn't be going back to their mother, ever. Story 12. I worked on a school bus as a monitor aide. There was one driver, we'll call him Ed. Ed was always complaining about something. Every single day there was some new issue, some problem. He was a bit of a pain. He got into an argument with one of our supervisors over the radio one day and earned himself a 3-day suspension. his first morning back from his suspension. First route of the day, he gets on the radio and starts back complaining. Dispatch asks him a few simple questions. He responds with hostility and some really unprofessional comments. The director of transportation, our big boss, gets on the radio and asks Ed to meet him in his office after morning routes. Ed responds, "I'll be there if I have time," boss says. "I need you to understand, this is not optional," Ed comes back. "I need you to understand, I'll be there if I have time, mind you." This is on the radio as we are picking up high school kids. Everyone can hear what's happening this entire time. Another dispatcher calls in and tells Ed, "When you finish your high school route, park your bus there at the school. We are bringing someone to take your route over and to bring you back to the lot." Ed did not like this and responded by saying, "Negative. I am finishing my route. Me. If you want someone to drive my route, you get our boss's boss and have her come drive this route. Otherwise, I am finishing my route." Dispatch asked for an estimated time of arrival to the high school. He responded, "Whenever our boss's boss is going to be there. Otherwise, I get there when I get there." Somewhere around this time, he starts talking like they were targeting him and picking on him, and that it ends today. Again, at this point, he has a bus full of high school kids. Now, I did not see what happened at the high school, but I heard from several other drivers. Apparently, the police were waiting for him once he got there, and they removed him from his bus. To quote one driver, he acted a fool the entire time. I'm not sure exactly what he was charged with. Maybe kidnapping, since he acted like he wasn't going to bring the kids to school unless he got what he wanted. Theft for not bringing the bus back? No clue. But I do know he was arrested and fired. A few days later, we get the news that he had a heart attack and died, most likely from all the stress. Story 13. I have a friend, I'll call him Jay, smart as heck, but maybe a little on the spectrum, so clueless as to social things. But he made great money in tech. One day, he's at a friend's house, and the friend said something to the effect of, "Nobody could bug my house without me knowing." So Jay thought it would be funny to put a spare webcam he happened to have in his backpack in his friend's entertainment center, plugged into his Xbox, just to see how long it took him to notice. Well, the friend didn't notice, but his friend's girlfriend did, and thought the friend had been recording them having sex, so she called the cops. The cops arrested the friend. Jay hears about it and goes in to explain. He didn't think he needed a lawyer. He figured the cops would be able to see it was just a dumb misunderstanding. Thing is, in my state, placing a recording device in someone's home without their consent is voyeurism, which is a sex crime. And Jay just admitted to the cops on the record that he had done so. Also in my state, it's a law that all sex crimes must be prosecuted. So even though Jay's friend and his friend's girlfriend didn't want to press charges, Jay still got prosecuted. The prosecutor and judge were as gentle as they could be, but he was still convicted. Now, as a registered sex offender for life, he has trouble finding and keeping work, gets harassed by neighbors, can't go to most of his kids' sports events, etc., all over one seemingly harmless prank. Story 14. My dad did this same thing when he was about 35 to 37. He had kids super early in life, and we had an amazing childhood. After starting to drink harder in his 30s, all of the sudden I was finding tin foil in random places and find him passed out around the house. Thank God my mom ended up divorcing him, and he ended up homeless and miserable. For a short period of time, I would still reach out to him just to see how he was doing. I would lend him some money and send him on his way. One time, he was wearing full face makeup that he thought was cool because Mickey Avalon does it. Sometimes he would be living in the abandoned motel, sometimes a tent. He ended up marrying a convicted felon who has multiple armed robbery charges, and more drug charges than I can count. They have been telling his parents they are getting clean. His parents, especially his mom, have a super soft spot for him and decided to help him with an apartment. A crack pipe fell out of the wife's purse right in front of my grandma. He is also a trust funder, but the trust is now conditioned around him passing a drug test. He claims he is clean but refuses the drug tests because that is an invasion of his privacy. Such a loss of a human being. It can truthfully happen to anyone, but at a certain point, no one can help you but yourself. Story 15. My dad. He was a really talented mechanic and the shop foreman. Well liked, made great money, loved his job, owned a nice house in a beautiful neighborhood, in a port town we all loved. Married to a wonderful woman, my mom, had 2 kids. He just couldn't stop drinking. He became abusive and horrible, lost everything. His house, his job, his family. He drank himself to death when I was 19, and my sister was 17. He died alone, to her enormous credit. After she left, my mom put herself through school and supported us all on her own. She got blacklisted by my dad's family and hers since the divorce was something they all looked down upon and felt she shouldn't shame the family. They even threatened to gang up on her and lie in court saying she was on drugs. She was not. It was the bravest and best thing she ever could have done for us. At the funeral, all these same people just kept telling her how brave she was, and we didn't know how bad he was till years later. My sister and I are both successful, thriving adults with great professions. We have our own families and children. We both own our houses and have a good income. We're well educated. Our lives are filled with love. It's all thanks to my mom. Over the years, I think about my dad from time to time. Having my own children now, a husband, all of whom I love dearly. I can't imagine any scenario I would ever put them through that. I don't feel sad about it anymore. But it's just such a waste. His whole life. And for what? Some liquid in a bottle. Addiction is a terrible thing.
What is something people always say that just pisses you off? Before we start with the first story, please hit a subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. Working nights meant I was always beat at family shindigs and holiday bashes. Every time I looked tired, someone would hit me with the same line. You can sleep when you're dead. It got old real quick, hearing it from different folks, sometimes more than once per event. Sure, they meant it as a joke, but it felt like they didn't get how draining my schedule was. All I wanted was a little understanding, maybe a nap, instead of hearing the same tired old line every time I showed up exhausted. Story 2. When I was a kid, there was a saying many adults and teachers used to justify, sweep under the rug blatant bullying. A horse kicks out of love. Yeah, it sounds even worse in English. The mindset was that if someone bullies you, especially if it was a boy bullying a girl, they did it BC, they liked you, right? Yeah, not so much. I was bullied for years. Just BC, I was weird and didn't fit in, and it had muck all to do with my gender. But I have never forgotten how I tried to tell my teacher I was being bullied, and their answer was a horse kicks out of love. Yeah, the horse never loved me, and I got kicked regardless. Story 3. You ever notice how folks who never bother to hit you up are always saying, "Don't be a stranger"? It's like they expect you to do all the legwork in keeping the connection alive. I swear it feels like I'm the one constantly reaching out, trying to stay in touch, while they just sit back and wait for me to do all the work. Don't get me wrong. I'm all about keeping connections alive, but it takes 2 to tango, right? So next time someone hits me with that line, maybe they should take their own advice and put in a little effort to keep the friendship going. Story 4. Man, it grinds my gears when people say, money doesn't buy happiness. Sure, it might not buy you joy straight up, but let's be real. It sure does make life a whole lot easier when you ain't stressing about paying the bills or putting food on the table. Having your basic needs covered? That's like laying a solid foundation for a happier life. It's not about buying happiness. It's about having the freedom and security to pursue the things that actually bring you joy. So next time someone tries to drop that line, they might want to take a step back and think about what life's like without those greenbacks. Story 5. It gets under my skin when folks pull out the old, there's starving kids in Africa who have it worse line. Sure, I get it, and I'm grateful for what I have, but that doesn't mean my problems don't matter. Just because someone else is struggling doesn't invalidate what I'm going through. It's like saying I can't feel bad because someone else has it worse. We all have our own battles to fight, and comparing them doesn't do anyone any favors. So next time someone tries to dismiss my struggles with that tired old saying, they better be ready for a reality check. Story 6. Everything happens for a reason line, like, yeah, I get it, but sometimes the reason is just that people suck. It's frustrating when folks try to slap a tidy little explanation on everything, like there's some grand plan or cosmic justice at play. But let's be real, life's messy, and sometimes bad stuff happens for no good reason at all. So next time someone drops that cliché on me, I'll be sure to hit them back with a dose of reality. Sometimes things just suck, no deeper meaning required.
Story 7. My mom and I would play a game when we were adjusting to life after the accident that killed my 23-year-old son last year. The worst comments and phrases won an award we made up for the day. Her worst was, "At least you have other grandkids." My worst were statements making it clear they thought he was the driver or it was his fault. He wasn't. He was a passenger, and it turned out not drunk. People are stupid. We all are, and we are especially stupid around death grief. I thought I'd be going through your brand of death grief since my ex was abusive and threatened to kill us all the time. A drunk driver beat him to it. I bow to your savory grief kaleidoscope. Story 8. When I found out that one of my close friends had suddenly died, and I burst into tears. To which he said, "What are you insecure about this time?" And when I said I just found out my friend died, he turned around and walked out of the room. The next day I was talking to his mom about it in the kitchen, and she was comforting me. To which he again said, "Can you stop being insecure?" And his mom practically tore him in half with words. I left him soon after, and I'm now in a very happy and healthy relationship with someone who also helps navigate my grief with me. I miss his parents sometimes, though. They were lovely people and deserved a better son than him. Story 9. My 23-year-old son died last year. I quickly realized the default phrase to say to a mom in shock and grief is, "I can't imagine." It was like a little dagger of disconnection each time it said. It's the default word society has agreed to have be the polite words you say to the grieving. In reality, you're saying, "I have no idea what to say to you, so I'm going to awkwardly say the phrase and run away." Just say nothing. It takes 10 times the courage to say nothing when there is really nothing to say. Sometimes I say I bow to your savory grief kaleidoscope now, because I am also guilty of doing it. Story 10. Growing up, my dad drilled into me the phrase, "Everything matters" in a, "if you don't do this right, you'll muck up the rest of your life via butterfly effect" sort of way. This is how a star student failed out of college because suicidal from the pressure of not wanting to end up doing exactly what she ended up doing. I have since learned that failure is actually okay, and I'm happy in the life I've got as it is. But Muckman, every time I hear my dad say that phrase, I get literal PTSD. Story 11. This is a niche one, but I own a lot of very small classic cars and am active in communities for them. Some British, some Italian, some Japanese K cars. No matter what car meets you go to, unless they're exclusive to members of your club, there's always some mucking chud going, "Yo bro, you should H Hayabusa." Else, 2Js, K24, 20 billions. Insert other meme engine. Bro, it would be epic bro. This is a direct result of video games, Forza and Gran Turismo being the worst. Because in those games you can swap any engine into anything, no matter how unrealistic, and magically the car drives perfectly fine. No weight distribution issues, no heat issues, no body modifications to fit the monstrous engine, etc. Some blame can be put on YouTubers, because they're dropping 6 figures on a stupid build and they conveniently don't show the end result. The problem with this dang is it ruins any and all discourse about cars. Literally, 50% of the people that come talk about my little cars, Classic Mini, a Z1, Fiat 600. Others, at meets, or just at gas stations, all they can talk about is mucking swaps that won't work. The car is too mucking small, this isn't mucking Forza. I'm not going to spend $100,000 to shove a 2JZ into a Classic Mini by gutting every inch of it and just have a body on a fully custom tube frame. That's not a Classic Mini, it's a race car that looks like a Mini. Plus it would be undrivable. These people have zero concept of power to weight ratios, weight distribution, and tire contact patch. And it's always some dumbass that obviously has never turned a wrench in their life that thinks a crazy engine swap no one has ever done, for a reason, can be done with $8,000 and pressing 10th. Mucking hate these people. Story 12. Invited to a party or BBQ or informal get-together at a person's house, and then have the host make the statement, "eating my food," drinking my drink somewhere in the conversation for the night. If you do not want to host, why do you allow people to come over? This is usually from someone well off in our business groups, and how I reluctantly will partake of anything, knowing that his partner has tried to make it welcoming by offering some food and beverage. I normally bring my own beverages, and carefully avoid any food if the phrase comes up. If you can't give it freely, don't give it at all. When I have people to my home, I am happy to play host and have guests share in some food. and I asked them to bring their own booze, which I don't think is unreasonable for a casual get-together. If you have been invited for dinner, it's on me. Story 13. The audacity of receiving a "can you please come into work today" message can really leave me feeling exasperated. I mean, seriously? Can't a person catch a break once in a while? It's as if they assume I don't have a life outside of work or any plans whatsoever. Don't they realize that I've got my own commitments and obligations? Or perhaps I just need a day to unwind and recharge my batteries. But nope, they have no qualms about disrupting my day and throwing a wrench into my plans by asking me to drop everything and hustle into work. It's like they don't even bother to consider my needs or respect my time. The lack of thoughtfulness and consideration is beyond frustrating. And to top it all off, it's always at the last minute, leaving me scrambling to rearrange my schedule or come up with a decent excuse to decline. It's incredibly unfair and puts me in a tough spot. Talk about adding insult to injury. It's moments like these that make me question whether they truly value my time, or if they see me as nothing more than a cog in the machine. But hey, I guess that's just the nature of the beast when you're part of the workforce, right? Story 14. When we were driving through the city and we saw my brother on a bike heading to work. He made a joke about it along the lines that my brother was poor and pathetic and how embarrassing it must be to ride a bike to work. Yes, my brother was currently struggling and I was actually helping him with rent at the time. I then started noticing he would always make comments about my immigrant family struggling. This was coming from a man that somehow never managed to keep a job more than a month or so and eventually expected me to financially support him. When we divorced, I discovered he had a crippling amount of secret credit card debt and substantial amount owed to friends and family. He now lives with mom off her benefits. I highly suspect elderly abuse. And my brother? Well, let's just say his wife and kids no longer have to look at price tags and he spends his Sundays cruising around in my ex's dream classic car. I never told my brother any of this, but it makes me feel pleased inside. Karma. Story 15. Working as a cashier in a grocery store, I strive every single day to brighten up my customers' experiences. Greeting them with a genuine smile and asking how their day's going is not just part of my job, it's my way of showing that I care. But let me tell you, it's beyond frustrating when I put in all this effort only to be met with rudeness and cynicism. It's like a punch in the gut every time I hear, "Well, you don't care if I'm doing well or not, so why ask?" I do care, damn it. I genuinely want to know how you're doing, and if something's bothering you, I'm more than willing to lend an ear and chat about it. But instead, I'm met with hostility and ingratitude. It's not just about not wanting to talk. I completely understand that sometimes people aren't in the mood for conversation, and I respect that. But it's the way my kindness is taken for granted and trampled upon that really gets to me. I mean, seriously? After all the effort I put in to make your day a little brighter, you're just gonna crap all over it like it means nothing? It's moments like these that make me question why I bother going the extra mile. Maybe I should just follow the lead of those mindless cashiers who couldn't care less about their customers' experiences. It would certainly make my job a lot easier. But then again, that's not who I am. Despite the occasional rudeness and ingratitude, I'll continue to greet each customer with a smile and ask how their day's going. Because at the end of the day, I refuse to let a few rude customers dull my genuine desire to make a positive impact one interaction at a time. All right, folks, that's a wrap. If you like more of this, please hit a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your thoughts in the comment below. I'll see you in the next video.